If you guys have used dating apps at any point, you've heard of Bumble. In today's video, I'm going to go over what the happened to Bumble, okay? It has crashed and burned since its original peak, all right? Imagine this. Bumble was worth $14 billion, was trading at $75 a share. Now it's trading at the time publishing this video, $3.16. It's lost 97% of its value. And you know what? This video, I'm gonna go over why Bumble is a classic example of how feminist ideology ultimately ruins brands. You do not wanna miss this video. All right, if you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Kane. I'm a Silver Bachelor. This channel is 100% dedicated to dating advice for older guys and the women that want to understand them. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification button because I'm dropping videos every week. Woo! Okay, let's get into this. So, what the hell happened to Bumble? And maybe you're not even aware of what's happened to Bumble. Well, as I mentioned, at one point in 2021, when Bumble went public, it was worth $14 billion at $75 a share. That's what it was trading at. And fast forward to 2026, actually right now in May, and that the share price is $3.16, and it's only worth about $500 million. That's 97% decline in the original share value. And like, what the hell happened? All right, ultimately what happened is the feminist ideology that completely just took over the company and is still there to this day, and no one's doing anything about it. All right, but let's get into this. And I've broken this video into three parts: before Bumble, and Bumble as a company, and why you should not invest in Bumble as a stock if you're looking at stocks. No, it's not an opportunity. All the experts are saying, like, get out of there. All right. So before Bumble, now Bumble was founded by Whitney Wolfe Herd. Now, Whitney Wolfe Herd was an executive and founder of Tinder, if you did not know that. All right. So I'm going to go through some history, and this is important to understand all the background. All right. So what happened is when Whitney Wolfe Herd left Tinder, okay, it's because she had a public fallout with her boyfriend, who was also one of the co-founders, and his name is Justin Mateen, okay? So they had a breakup. It was kind of nasty, and she claimed that she was receiving harassment and discrimination, okay? Tinder's side argued that it was more of basically just a messy breakup, and it was a startup environment, and there was conflicts, and she was saying that there was a systemic sexism and all these things, okay? Anyways, there was a lawsuit. It ended up settling out of court for about $1 million for basically both sides to just kind of move along, okay? So here's the basic timeline. So Whitney Wolfe Herd was an early Tinder executive and VP of marketing, and she was heavily involved in growing the app on college campuses, all right? And she, as I mentioned, she was dating co-founder Justin Mateen, all right? Now, after their breakup, things inside the company allegedly became toxic, okay? In 2014, she filed a lawsuit against Tinder claiming sexual harassment and discrimination, okay? According to the lawsuit, she alleged that she was stripped of the co-founder title because having a young woman founder made the company look like a joke. Okay, her words. Okay, she claimed that Mateen, her boyfriend, sent abusive messages and that leadership tolerated it. She also claimed that she was fired or pushed out after the relationship deteriorated. Okay, that's her side. Remember, there's always three sides to a story, right? There's what she said, he said, and what actually happened. So on Tinder's side, some insiders have argued that she resigned voluntarily after some internal drama. Justin Mateen's side, he said basically that the situation got messy after the breakup and that their personal conflict later became framed as harassment and discrimination, all right? Tinder denied that as a company they engaged in any wrongdoing, and Tinder said that some of Mateen's private messages, okay, were inappropriate, but argued that Wolfe Herd's broader allegations against management were unfounded, all right? So here's the key thing. They interviewed former Tinder employees, and the Tinder employees claimed that Wolfe Herd's role at Tinder was exaggerated and disputed the co-founder title narrative, all right? So allies of Mateen and Sean Rad all right, suggested that the conflict stemmed largely from a failed romantic relationship inside a high pressure startup rather than systemic sexism. Okay, so now Bumble as a company, and this is very, very important. All right, so Whitney Wolfe Herd openly positioned Bumble as a feminist or female first dating app. Okay, and there was other comments where she said, no, it's a feminist dating app. She once described it as a first feminist dating app. Okay, the branding that may have energized some users, critics argued that it alienated many men who were ultimately funding the platform through subscriptions and boost. Here's a reality. Any dating app, it's 70% men. Okay? They're the ones funding the platform, not the women. But of course, the women need to be there in order for the men to continue paying their subscription. Okay, so Bumble built a women message first system, but as I mentioned, 70% of the paying customers on the dating apps are men. And if the paying customers feel restricted from initiating conversations, that creates friction in the entire business model. All right. So, meanwhile, the match group, okay, so I spoke about where Bumble was and is. So, Bumble, as I just a quick recap, it went public in 2021 and it was massive hype and it was valued at around $14 billion at the time, right? The stock was trading at $75 a share. And now, fast forward to 2026, May 2026, the share price is at $3.16 from 75 bucks. Okay. Meanwhile, this is very interesting. Meanwhile, Match Group owns Tinder and Hinge. Match Group and Hinge continue to generate billions in annual revenue, and Hinge keeps growing aggressively. Hinge revenue reportedly jumped 25 to 39% in its recent reporting periods up until recent months in 2026. And yet Bumble continues to lose money and in fact lost 50% in its stock value since September of 2025. So you might be wondering, okay, so why is Bumble ultimately toast? All right. Well, critics have pointed to Bumble's executive culture, all right, and have argued that the company became too ideologically driven instead of focusing purely on engagement, monetization, and user psychology like Tinder and Hinge. Also, just a fun fact, 70% of the executive team at Bumble are women compared to 30% inside of Tinder and Hinge. You do with that as you wish with that information, but I just find it interesting. That's all. So ultimately, to make matters worse is that Bumble replaced, this is the key thing, and I'm looking at my notes here. I'm like, okay, so they replaced Whitney Wolfe Herd, all right, at one point, and this was back in March 2025, or excuse me, before March 2025, they replaced her for like a year and a half. Then they brought her back. So imagine this. She was the one who brought the company public, cool. But the company kept losing money, lose stock value, and then they get rid of her. Okay, fair. And then they bring her back. All right. And I looked at the stock charts, and it has been nothing but bad for her and Bumble. And the company still continues to plummet even after they brought her back in March 2025. Okay. And so at the end of the day, right, men like the option to be able to make the first move, and Bumble ultimately removed that dynamic, and guys are simply just bouncing, and they're like, you know what, I'm not getting any satisfaction from the money I'm spending or gratification from the money I'm spending, so I'm just going to bounce over to Tinder and Hinge, and because at least I get some gratification, I can message people first, and I don't have to wait for somebody to message them back. Okay, so at the end of the day, Tinder and Hinge, they focus on the men and the addictive engagement loops, prompts, and AI matching and faster conversation flow, right? And both of these companies are crushing it. So I don't know about you, man, but when you look at what's happened and you can trace it all back to, right, the ideology that ultimately caused the company to crash and burn. And we're seeing it even in Hollywood. We're seeing these amazing movies that were stories, let's say, at one point, and Hollywood decides to make an ideology out of it. or some interpretation, and it's almost always going to be a disaster. And so I thought to share just kind of some history around Bumble in case you've ever used the app or you've always wondered. I hope you liked the video, and we'll see you next time.